Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're diving deep into a story of incredible loss, unwavering loyalty, and ultimate restoration. We're talking about Naomi, a woman whose life journey reads like a classical tragedy, but ends in triumphant blessing. This isn't just an old story. It's a powerful lesson in navigating life when everything falls apart. Our story begins in Bethlehem during a terrible famine. Naomi, her husband Elimelech, and their two sons, Malong and Chilion, decide they have no choice but to leave their home and seek refuge in the neighboring land of Moab. Now Moab was not where they belonged. They were Israelites, and Moabites were traditionally their enemies, but desperation drove them there. For a while things seemed stable. The sons grew up and married Moabite women. Malong married Ruth, and Chilion married Orpah. But then disaster struck. Elimelech died. Naomi was left a widow in a foreign land. And just 10 years later, tragedy compounded. Both of her sons died too. Can you imagine the depth of that pain? Naomi was left completely alone, surrounded only by her two non-Israelite daughters-in-law, Ruth and Orpah. Everything she had, everything she knew was gone. She had sacrificed her homeland for safety, only to lose her entire family unit. Hearing that the famine back in Judah had finally ended, Naomi made a heartbreaking decision. She would return home. But she insisted that her daughters-in-law stay in Moab. She reasoned, quite practically, that they had a better chance of remarrying and finding security there. She had nothing left to give them. She told them, "Go back to your mother's houses. May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me." Orpah, tearfully, kissed her mother-in-law goodbye and turned back. But Ruth refused. This is the moment of iconic loyalty that defines the entire narrative. Naomi tried everything to convince Ruth to leave. "Look," she pleaded, "your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her gods. Go back with her." But Ruth's response is one of the most beautiful declarations of devotion ever recorded. She said, "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go I will go, and where you lodge I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die I will die, and there will I be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death separates me from you." That is commitment. Ruth wasn't just committing to Naomi. She was committing to Naomi's people, and most importantly, to Naomi's God. She chose a future of uncertainty, poverty, and foreignness, simply because she wouldn't abandon the one person who needed her. So the two women, Naomi bitter and broken, and Ruth loyal and resolute, began the long, difficult journey back to Bethlehem. When they arrived, the whole town was buzzing. The women asked, "Is this Naomi?" And Naomi's response reveals the deep wound she carried. She told them, "Do not call me Naomi, which means pleasant. Call me Mara, which means bitter, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty." She truly believed her life was over. She saw herself as cursed by fate. They arrived right at the beginning of the barley harvest. Destitute, Ruth knew they had to find a way to eat. She went out to glean, which means picking up the leftover grain dropped by the harvesters, a tough, humbling job reserved for the poor. By sheer, beautiful coincidence, or divine direction, depending on how you see it, Ruth ended up gleaning in the field belonging to a wealthy landowner named Boaz. Boaz was a relative of Naomi's late husband, Elimelech. He was also a man of integrity and great kindness. He noticed Ruth, a foreign woman working diligently and selflessly for her mother-in-law. When he learned who she was and heard about her radical devotion to Naomi, he showed her extraordinary favor. He instructed his workers to leave extra grain for her and ensured her protection and safety. When Ruth came home that evening, loaded with barley, Naomi was astonished. She immediately recognized that Boaz was a kinsman redeemer, a close relative who, by law, had the duty and the right to redeem the family's land and provide for the widow, often by marrying her. Naomi, seeing a flicker of hope for Ruth, began to plan. She instructed Ruth to prepare herself and go to Boaz on the threshing floor, following a complex, culturally specific proposal custom. Ruth followed every instruction perfectly, demonstrating her continued trust in Naomi's guidance. Boaz, impressed by Ruth's honor and loyalty and clearly fond of her, agreed to take on the role of kinsman redeemer. After navigating a tricky legal requirement with a closer relative who had first refusal, Boaz publicly secured the right to redeem the land and marry Ruth. And so, Ruth the Moabite, who chose loyalty over comfort, was married to Boaz, the kind, wealthy Israelite. Their story, which started with famine and death, culminated in a joyous wedding. But the story doesn't end there. Ruth and Boaz had a son named Obed, and here's where Naomi's redemption is truly complete. The women of Bethlehem gathered around Naomi, celebrating. They declared, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a redeemer. He shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him." Naomi, the woman who returned empty and bitter, took her grandson Obed and held him close, effectively becoming his nurse. She was no longer Mara, the bitter one. She was Naomi, pleasant again, surrounded by family, security, and hope. And here is the incredible final detail. Obed became the father of Jesse, who became the father of King David. This makes Ruth and Boaz, and by extension, Naomi, the ancestors of Israel's greatest king and ultimately, key figures in the lineage of Jesus himself. Naomi's story teaches us that even when we feel utterly empty, even when we rename ourselves Mara because of the bitterness of our circumstances, loyalty, integrity, and faith often expressed through the love of others can lead to total, unexpected restoration. She went out full, came back empty, but was refilled with a lineage that changed the world. Thank you so much for watching. If this story encouraged you to look for the silver lining even in your darkest moments, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into life-changing stories. I'll see you next time. May the Lord bless you all.